Okay. So last time we did a Zamra. Now we're back at it again, doing connecting to the Tzaddik, Mitzvah or controversy. This is the reason why I'm doing this particular lecture. It's because after years of Rabbi David's class, this is something I had a problem with at one point. It's something most people who came to class found the most controversial. This particular topic is the whole idea of connecting to the Tzaddik, because it sounds very Christian-like. And this is what most people have a problem with usually. Because this whole idea is, why are we connecting? Why do I have to connect to a Tzaddik? Why can't I connect to Hashem directly? No one says you can't, but you kind of can't, but you kind of could. This is when I was first started getting into breast stuff years ago. This is I remember someone told me, oh, it's very good, it's very nice to, there's a lot of good ideas, a lot of good things there. Just watch out when we're saying things about like connecting to the Tzaddik, like, don't get into too deep with that. Baruch Hashem, I didn't listen to them because it's a very holy thing connecting to the Tzaddik. And I just want to talk about that there is a difference between connecting to the Tzaddik in a holy Jewish way and what they refer to as the same thing in Christianity. Christianity there's a very similar concept, but it is very different. And I think it's an important distinction, because this is why a lot of people pull back from Breslov. This whole concept of connecting to the Tzaddik is why a lot of people pull back from Breslov. It's because it sounds very Christian.
If you like him, you come through.
So can you guys mute yourselves? Thank you. So why do we, sorry. So what is this whole concept of connecting to the Tzaddik? It stems in the idea of humility. This idea that you have to set yourself aside and, so to speak, trust someone greater than you and admit that there's someone greater than you who can help you go up. There's a lot of reasons for it, but this is one of the main reasons our breast was controversial, and mainly it's because it's very misunderstood. I wanted to bring up that there's an authority that basically I think we can all trust, even those who aren't Hasids, and we all understand that this authority is, widely trusted, and that's Rav Aryeh Kaplan. That's all. Everyone knows who Rav Aryeh Kaplan is, or if you don't know who he is, he was mamish a genius, and I don't mean that in like the sense that people say it. Like, I mean actual genius. Like, he was in public school his whole life, but he ended up like somehow getting into like, I think MIT or something, and became like a astrophysicist or something like he was like a genius. And he made tshuva. I thought he was born religious. He made tshuva when he was like 18, and he died when he was like in his early 40s. So like in a very, very short amount of time, he became like one of the biggest Torah giants in the world, and literally wrote so many books. Wrote books, rewrote them, commentary. He's an amazing writer, amazing commentator. He did a lot of Breslov books, nothing short of a genius. And he also did a book, very interestingly, on Christianity, and he learned all the concepts of Christianity in depth so that he can refute it. And and I've read parts of it. And he read a book about why it's idol worship, and basically what's the difference in Christianity and Judaism, and that they connect to JC and all that, and that he brought up the very specific points why it's considered idol worship, why it's considered not good, and why there's a difference between that and Judaism, and he understood it to a very, very fine detail. He also wrote a lot of books in Breslov, translated a lot of books in Breslov, and made a lot of commentary on Breslov. And if you've ever read any of his commentaries that he wrote, I think he wrote an English version with commentary of Rav Nachman's stories, or various other books, Outpouring of the Soul, all that, about Rav Aryeh Kaplan. And he was very, very familiar with this concept of connecting yourself to the Tzaddik. So I think just based on that, the fact that we have this huge authority that everyone trusts, it's very rare that we haven't seen a book by Rav Aryeh Kaplan. He's everywhere, and everyone understands he was a Torah giant. And obviously, obviously from his writings, we see that he understood both all these concepts of Christianity, and he also understood all these concepts of Breslov, of Hasidism, and the concept of connecting yourself to the Tzaddik. So if he saw no issue with that, because you can't cherry pick, either Breslov is idol worship or it's not, because it's a huge part of Likutei Moharan is connecting to the Tzaddik. A lot of Torahs are based on that. So obviously he saw no problem there, knowing the finer details. So if he saw no problem there, without even understanding, I think there shouldn't be a problem in what Breslov says is connected to Tzaddik, that it shouldn't be considered idol worship. I think it's an important topic because this is a very controversial topic, and a lot of people pull back from Breslov because of this, before they've learned what it is. And because of that, they end up not like learning about how sweet it is, and not learning about, learning and growing and doing Kibbutz Dut, and they never get a chance to work on themselves and do all of these things because they just pull back when it comes to this idea of connecting to the Tzaddik. And maybe even some rabbis speak out against it because honestly, they just don't know really what it is. But the truth of truths, a more deep spiritual answer is that, look, Rav David says there's a truth and there's a truth of truths. The more deep, on the outside it looks like this, but the more deeper reason is that Rav Nachman explains that people can't get light from a certain tzaddik, from a certain Torah in this world. They can't receive and benefit from it unless, and if as long as the truth of truth is holy light, there must be some opponent in the world. So whenever it is that someone speaks out against Breslov or starts problems or whatever, I used to get upset, but after a while, with learning the word of David, instead of getting upset, I get, well, first happy because it's kind of, for me, confirmation that this is real, because there are opponents. And number two, it shows that I must be getting something very holy if there's opponents out there. And I'm very grateful for them, that of all people, spiritually speaking, they're the ones who, so to speak, involuntarily opted to be the gatekeepers, to keep it open so that the rest of us can get it. Because Baruch Hashem, we have opponents, and therefore I'm able to learn it. If it wasn't for them, none of us would be able to learn these teachings. I wouldn't be able to grow. So thank God for everyone who opposes Breslov, for taking those bullets for us. Baruch Hashem. Zat Hashem, at the right time, they should come back to tshuva as well, in whatever sense that means. It doesn't necessarily mean Breslov, but just closer to Hashem in the best way that they could. Opposition. You're going to get a lot of opposition because this is somewhat of a controversial topic, even though it's not really controversial. The truth is that the Zohar actually talks about this a lot. This concept of connecting to the Tzaddik. A lot of people, here's another thing a lot of people like to say is, why do I need to connect to a Tzaddik? Why can't I just go pray to Hashem directly? You are praying to Hashem directly. But it's also like saying during time of the temple, why do I need to bring my sacrifice to the temple to a Kohen? Why can't I just cut it myself and make a sacrifice to Hashem on my own altar? Why do I need to bring it to a Kohen? Okay, I'll bring it to the temple. I'll cut it myself. Why do I need a Kohen to do sacrifice? This seems like a far-fetched comparison, but it's actually a direct comparison because Kohanim, spiritually speaking, Kabbalistically speaking, are often parallel to the concept of a tzaddik. By seeing a Kohen, you're seeing a tzaddik. There's always comparisons done in the Torah. Different things in different situations. Like sometimes Hashem is compared to our father. Sometimes Hashem is compared to our spouse. Sometimes Hashem is compared to our king. Sometimes, different people can represent different things. Like Yosef represents the tzaddik, but David represents kingship. David can also represent the Baal Tshuva. Rachel represents the Shekhinah, and what have you. People represent different things, and sometimes multiple different things. They're called parallelisms, depending on. If you ever seen this famous picture, Kabbalistic picture of like it's a bunch of circles, almost like a tree trunk, and like it's, so to speak, there's a parallelism for everything. So in one circle, Yaakov will be Yaakov, and in another deeper circle, Yaakov is whatever Tiferet. Another circle, Yaakov is the face of Hashem, so to speak. Another circle, Yaakov is the Kisei HaKavod. There's different parallelisms. So without going too much deeper into that, the parallelism for a Kohen is a tzaddik. In other words, he is some holy being, a holy person that we come see in humility, that we humble ourselves, saying, I can't fix me, so to speak. I need God, or I need a tzaddik. I need someone greater than me. So it takes humility to admit someone's greater than me. Someone knows more than I do. Or someone can help me in a way I can't help myself. That takes humility in any way, even if you're in a secular way. If you got to go see a doctor, you're admitting I can't heal me. I need assistance other than myself. So it takes a certain degree of humility. So the concept of seeing a Kohen was like the concept of seeing tzaddik. I read this somewhere else. I forgot what it was. It might have been Mamlawez. There's a concept back in the times of the temple. People would bring sacrifices. Some people would want to get a different Kohen than they got the year before because they felt like this guy wasn't as, whatever, machmir or stark as I would want him to be. I want to get like a really holy Kohen. There's a teaching that whichever Kohen you're supposed to get to do your sacrifice, don't ask for him to change. That's the Kohen Hashem specifically wanted you to get, because through him is your specific tikkun. Even if it doesn't look like he's the ideal person you want doing your sacrifice, that's your tikkun. So to speak, that's compared to a tzaddik. Just like tzaddikim bring us tikkunim, they're able to be on lofty heights and they can bring us certain constrictions to tikkunim. So too the Kohen. So by saying that, and a sacrifice is obviously considered avodah. It's avodah Hashem. What we do our it's a service. It's a sacrifice. It's compared to your prayers, your tefillah. That's why they say that's why they put our tefillot in place of korbanot today, is because tefillot is also a parallelism to a sacrifice. When you say a prayer, it's a spiritual parallel to making a sacrifice. So similarly, spiritually, you would bring your sacrifice to a Kohen, so to speak. You would bring your prayer to a tzaddik. Rabbi Nachman also has another Torah about that everyone is part of one of the tribes of Israel spiritually, and nobody really knows what tribe they're part of. And the only way to get your prayers answered is that your prayers have to go through the correct gate in Shamayim that corresponds to your tribe. And if you don't know what your tribe is, as long as you're connected to a tzaddik, that prayer, he makes sure in Shamayim those prayers go through the right gate. So that's the concept of the Kohen, obviously Kohanim. Another parallel is when people say, "Oh, why can't I just pray to Hashem myself? Why do I need to be connected to a tzaddik?" First of all, what does it mean? How does Rabbi Nachman bring down that we have to be? How do we connect to a tzaddik? There's three ways. Number one, seeing his face, which can be learning his Torah. How we learn it? How we seeing somebody's face by learning their Torah? The essence of a person is his face. This is how you recognize people, is by their face. If you don't see someone's face, you don't really recognize them. So So that's a person's essence. It's the key part of them. It's not the main part physically, but this is the key essential part of how you recognize people. It's also corresponding to a spiritual part of your spiritual face. Your spiritual face, your consciousness, this stream of thoughts that you're having constantly, is your wisdom. Every person has his wisdom, so to speak, that's filtered through him. And when you listen to, you're receiving wisdom, and your wisdom is corresponding to your conscious thoughts. And your conscious thoughts are corresponding to your spiritual face, so to speak. Your wisdom is your essence. It is who you are. After a person passes away, they no longer have a physical body, but you don't just enter into a new person. You're still the same you. This stream of conscious thought you're currently experiencing continues even after a person passes away. So you continue having these thoughts. They're not limited inside of a body, but you're still you in essence. So your essence is your conscious thoughts. And even scientifically speaking, what gives you your conscious thoughts, your personality, is your frontal lobe. In other words, the front of your brain. This is also the same place where we put our tefillin, on the head. It's your essence, the essence of your wisdom. And the front of the tefillin, interestingly enough, a little chidush here, a tefillin is black because it represents constrictions, a constriction of light, so that we are able to receive wisdom, so to speak. Because Hashem's light is endless. So how do we receive His light? Through constrictions, so to speak, Hebrew letters, or the white being bent and reshapen into blackness in a way that now we can experience. That's what the concept of a Hebrew letter is, this endless light, and Hashem takes it and reshapes it into this black shape. Then now it has a shape, and now we can understand some concept. And then there's another one, I add up together, and they give us a concept of wisdom of something that we can understand. So a little bit of a long digression there, but a person's consciousness, his wisdom, is his essence. So when you're seeing the face of, when you're learning someone's Torah, when you're learning the Torah of a tzaddik, and it doesn't even have to be chidushim, it could just be something, he could just be teaching you something, literally reading a verse to you, but as long as Torah is being filtered through him, you're seeing his face, so to speak, spiritually. What happens if a tzaddik is no longer physically alive? By simply learning his Torah that he brought down, you're connecting to his consciousness. You're connecting to his wisdom. We see that even beyond Breslov. There's a whole thing with Zera Shimshon. If anyone's familiar, it's taking the Jewish community by storm. This whole idea of, people who learn Zera Shimshon see all kinds of miracles, like especially with Zivugim, finding your soulmate and all that. Learning Zera Shimshon. There's I have like 2 books just with a bunch of miracle stories of people who started learning Zera Shimshon, and how they started finding their zivugim, they started finding their wives, started finding husbands, everything, all these amazing miracle stories about Zera Shimshon. If anyone has read Zera Shimshon, all these miracle stories are all about finding their zivugim, which I find is interesting. But if anyone's ever read Zera Shimshon, you'll see it has little to do with zivugim, and it doesn't seem all that miraculous. It's very obviously it's beautiful. It's deep Torah by a big tzaddik, Rabbi Shimshon Chaim Nachmani, Zatzal. But I thought after reading about all these miracle stories before even reading Zera Shimshon, I thought, oh, I'm going to open this up right now. It's going to have all kinds of like interesting, crazy, like Kabbalistic secrets or something. I don't know. All these stories are nuts. And when I was reading Zera Shimshon, I saw this is like a commentary on the Torah. It's like Me'am Loez. I thought it was going to be like a bunch of secrets, but it's his own commentary, which I thought was interesting. Because I was like, what does this tzaddik's commentary have to do with people like with such a big zgula for people seeing miracles in their business and zivugim and getting married, and just by learning his commentary on the Torah? Yes, because it's not specifically what the commentary says. It's the fact that this was wisdom filtered through this tzaddik. This is his insights. This is his learning. This is wisdom through this tzaddik, Rav Shimshon Nachmani. This is a book he wrote, and he gave a promise that basically anyone who learns this, it's as if I'm going to pray for them in Shamayim, that they should find their zivug. What is the connection? This is also a big connection, and even though this isn't like Hasidish, it is Hasidish, because this is, Rabbi Nachman talks about this. It's the whole idea that the more you connect to a tzaddik, the more he can help you in Shamayim. In the Zohar, it says, if it wasn't for tzaddikim praying for our world every single day, this world will not, in Shamayim, not tzaddikim that passed away, this world will not exist for 1 second. So it's them praying for us that keeps the world alive. So tzaddikim are constantly praying for us. And Rabbi Nachman brings down, and this is also a very well-known concept even outside of the Hasidic world, this is a Kabbalistic concept, the closer you are connected to a certain tzaddik, the more they can do for you in Shamayim, the more they can plead for you, the closer your souls are bound together. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, all the Jewish souls are one soul. So the closer we get to that concept, the greater power we have, the greater power we have of helping each other, the closer we get. So that's why we have to, that's the connection between seeing the face of the tzaddik, learning his wisdom, and learning wisdom brings you closer to a tzaddik. We see that from Zer Shimshon, we see that from a lot of other miracle stories of people who, learned the wisdom of a tzaddik, and all of a sudden start seeing miracles or whatever. Another level of connecting to the tzaddik is giving tzedakah to the tzaddik. Why tzedakah? The Rabbi Nachman brings down that it's the best level, it's the best way to give tzedakah is tzedakah to the tzaddik. What if the tzaddik is no longer physically alive? You give it to those people who are bringing down his light, bringing down his wisdom, supporting them because it's them who is allowing you to see him. You're giving tzedakah and allowing his light to continue on in the world. As long as the wisdom is being learned, he's alive, physically, so to speak. So that when I give tzedakah to someone who teaches, like if I'm connected, it could be any tzaddik. If I'm connected on all three levels to, let's say, Lubavitcher Rebbe, if I give tzedakah to Chabad, technically I'm connecting myself on a deeper level, on a higher level, to this particular tzaddik. When I give tzedakah to those, let's say, who teach Breslev, I'm connecting myself, so to speak, as long as it's, obviously they're actually teaching Rav Nachman's teachings, not just something else and calling it Breslev. Then you are connecting yourself to Rav Nachman, you're giving tzedakah to the tzaddik. It's also taught that money, everything in this physical world comes from a different spiritual world, and then it devolves, breaks itself down, so to speak, and manifests itself in some physical way in this world. This whole world is, so to speak, one giant projection. It's like a movie screen. See a car on a movie screen, I can't go up to it and start driving it. What am I seeing? I'm seeing a projection that's coming from one source of light. It's the same thing with everything you see or experience in this physical world. It's all a spiritual projection of a point, a source of light in a higher spiritual world. So what is money? They say money comes from the same point of light as the world of souls. It's a very high level. When money comes down in this physical world and manifests itself as physical money that you can now use, and then Hashem gives you, let's say, money through whatever means, you now have, so to speak, a piece of your soul that you can physically hold, as long as you didn't steal it or anything. But this is, so to speak, a piece of your physical soul. So where you put it is where you can, so to speak, physically put a piece of your soul into that thing. That's why it's so holy to give tzedakah, because it's as if you're taking a piece of your soul and putting it for a mitzvah. It's like Mesirat Nefesh. It's like killing yourself, so to speak, because you're taking a part of yourself and putting it to do something purely for the sake of Hashem or for the sake of a mitzvah. That's why it's so holy. That's why I say tzedakah saves from death. Tzedakah has all these miracle stories from tzedakah. Tzedakah saves, and it brings chesed, takes away judgments, and all these amazing things. It's because you're giving a piece of your soul away. So that's also why it's such a holy way to connect the next level of connecting the tzaddik, giving tzedakah to the tzaddik. I think it's actually the first level. Giving tzedakah to the tzaddik is because you're giving a piece of your soul to this spiritual master. There's a lot of stories about big tzaddikim who are able to do lots of tikkunim for people. Tzaddikim are on a different level. They can see your soul. They can see what tikkunim you need. By giving a part of yourself, it's not like the tzaddik needs money. None of them need money, really. You need them much more. So when you give part of your money, you give tzedakah to the tzaddik, he is now able, now he has spiritually a part of your soul, and now he's more capable of doing a lot of tikkunim for you. He's actually more capable of doing tikkunim for the entire world by giving this money to the tzaddik. Even Rabbi Nachman has a very also controversial Torah about how a person should be very careful where he gives his tzedakah, and that he shouldn't just give it off willy-nilly to anybody, because it could actually be making spiritual damage in the world by giving parts of your soul to places where there's not a tikkun there. It wouldn't help you in reality. It's actually could be making things worse. You should be careful who you give your money to. But that's a whole other Torah, also very controversial. But when you learn it in depth, it makes a lot more sense spiritually. But this is why we give tzedakah to the tzaddik, and this is how we connect ourselves on that level. I'm just going into like what it means to connect into the tzaddik, and also throwing in why it's controversial and whatnot. Why do we? What was I going to say? Why do we give? What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, tzedakah. We give tzedakah to the tzaddik. There was another reason why. It's because the act of giving a part of your money to tzedakah requires humility. If you'll notice, all the 3 levels of connecting to a tzaddik are all 3 of them are on some level connecting a person to a deeper level of humility. Harizal says it's the greatest of all traits is humility. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu, the concept of the Tzaddik Yisod Olam, actually that's Yosef, but Moshe Rabbeinu is the concept of the tzaddik also. That's why he was, out of all his good traits, he was called the most humble, because humility is the most holy of traits. So if you notice, all 3 of these levels that connect yourself to the tzaddik are all related to humility, because it takes humility to go and learn Torah from someone saying that this person knows more than me. By learning Torah, you're saying this person knows more than me. If even no more, then why am I learning from him? By giving tzedakah, you're saying it also takes a certain level of humility, because you're believing in them. Because if you don't have humility, if you didn't believe, didn't have emunah, you wouldn't give 1 cent away to tzedakah. It wouldn't make any sense. It would just be a complete waste of money. But because you believe to a certain level that even because I'm giving this money away, I'm not getting anything back that I can see. So it takes emunah. You're believing in something greater. But emunah automatically is humility, because emunah means that I believe in Hashem in that moment, so to speak, and that something is greater than me. It's also a level of humility. The last level of connecting to the tzaddik is doing vidui to Hashem in front of the tzaddik. Why? This also takes a tremendous amount of humility. By admitting all that we did wrong in front of a tzaddik, because it's humiliating. It's saying position is one thing, but in front of a live person feels more humiliating. It's yeah. Also funny, connected to the Kohen and doing sacrifices. If you guys didn't know, Aminov, it says if a person brought a sacrifice, I think it's not only in Aminov, a lot of places it says a person brought a sacrifice to the Kohen, he did a sacrifice, but the person in that moment that he was doing the sacrifice, thinking about something else, or had something different in his heart, or he didn't have it as a heart of regret, it's like a whole sacrifice is nothing happened. He has to go halachically, get another, whatever it is, a sheep or whatever, and bring it, and they have to do the korban all over again, and this time he has to have the right kavanot, because he has to feel in that moment, he has to have, he has to be humbled in that moment. He has to, if you do tshuva, you have to not think of it, you have to say mani, you have to break yourself a little bit, you have to feel shame or regret the tshuva, you have to feel, in essence, a level of humility. So those are 3 levels of connecting to the tzaddik. One of the most controversial ones, obviously, was doing vidui in front of a tzaddik. Early on, Rabbi Nachman's followers were called viduinikers, because they were known to be that they would do vidui in front of the tzaddik, which is the most controversial thing. But it's very interesting, because this is actually there's a lot of connections to this as an ancient custom. It's just we fell out of doing vidui in front of tzaddikim because the Christians took it and adopted it. That's why the Christians have confessions where they go and they do confession in front of like their priest. Why in front of the priest? Why can't they confess to Hashem? It's the Christians did that a lot at the time when they were forming a lot of their customs. Yeah, they still do it to this day. When the Christians were forming a lot of their customs, they took a lot of them from a lot of Jewish customs at the time and a lot of Kabbalistic customs. And the sages at the times where Christianity was starting to gain power were so afraid because everyone was comparing Christianity as a leg of Judaism. People who didn't understand, and they thought, "Oh, this is just like Judaism. It's just like another sect." And the sages were really afraid that everyone believe in that they would have a lot of Jews who didn't know any better would go and be pulled into Christianity because they think, "Oh, this is just Judaism. It's just like, oh, it's kind of like when I go to, go hang out at Chabad, I'm hanging out with like this interesting, like, Hasidic sect." And they thought, "Oh, this is also like another Hasidic," and the sages were afraid of that, so they really pushed away from anything that resembled what Christianity was at the time, and how they would basically hijack some of our most ancient holy Kabbalistic customs for themselves. So this custom of doing vidui in front of a tzaddik is an old one, and it's not something the Christians invented. This is historically something Jewish. It's just we've lost touch with it because of the hold of Christianity over the world, and us wanting to make very clear lines that we are different. They don't want people comparing them and saying, "Oh, they both do vidui, they both do this. Oh, it's basically Judaism." JC is also, the tzaddik. He's the tzaddik yisod olam has v'shalom. No, that's not the case. So they don't want people saying that. That's why they made such clear distinctions. But in no way do we believe that Tzaddik Yisod Olam is somehow not a physical person, that he's somehow God, has v'shalom. He's not. The Tzaddik is the Tzaddik. He is a spiritual master from whom you can gain a lot of tikkunim. Even before Hasidism, if anyone read the life of the Arizal, the Arizal was famous for giving all kinds of tikkunim that were for sins that there's no tikkun for. There's a lot of famous stories about Jews who come to the Arizal and like skeptics and be like, "Oh, we heard you were like such a big tzaddik. Want to hear what you have to say?" Like I think there was a story of a guy from at the time it was the Byzantine Empire, which is present day Turkey. There's a guy who was a Jew from there. He came down as a wealthy businessman. And he said, and he was very, very skeptical of the Arizal. And the Arizal started naming for him every sin he did from the beginning of his life to that very moment. And even the time, the place, and what he was thinking in his heart at the time, like everything down to the T. It took him like several hours, and he was like going through every sin. And he had a lot of sins, and he even did things like he was like sleeping with his maid and like things like that. And, yeah, Jewish guy. And so the guy started crying. "You want to do tshuva?" He said, "I'll do whatever you want. I'll stay with you. Help me." And usually we learned that there's not really a tikkun for sins like this. But the Arizal gave him a lot of tikkunim. He had him read from the Zohar, and he would like, and he did like a whole thing where the punishment for this historically in Judaism is that they would have to pour hot lead down your throat, and a person would die. So Arizal did like a version of this where he didn't have to kill him, which by the way is like a big no-no. Like any sage will tell you, like, we can't do that. Like we don't have like Sanhedrin. We can't do that anymore. But obviously Arizal was on a different level. They understood what they can and cannot do, because this is just an example of what it means that tzaddikim bring down special tikkunim for each person, that they understand how to make certain constrictions. So there's just an example. There's a lot of stories like this. A lot of stories like this from the Baal Shem Tov. A lot of stories like this from the Arizal. There's a lot of stories like this from Rav Nachman, that they're able to give special tikkunim, special specifically tailored remedies for each person, because they were capable of seeing your soul and the root of your soul, And they're always doing this technically, even in Shamayim. They're always praying for us, pleading with us, because they are, so to speak, the other half of our spiritual soul. It's compared to, a lot of people think, oh, so they're better than us. No, we're two halves of the same whole, so to speak. That, like if the whole world, all of Am Yisrael is an arrow, like the head of an arrow. So all of Am Yisrael is like an arrow, and the Tzaddik is that little point on top. So he's the one that makes it go, that allows us to pierce through, so to speak. But we're the ones that push it through. So he's, so to speak, our leader. That's why we needed a Moshe Rabbeinu to take us out of Egypt. Why didn't Hashem just take us out of Egypt as a nation? Why do we need a Moshe Rabbeinu? Why do we need a Yosef Tzaddik to save the brothers? Why did we need, one Tzaddik to save us? It's because that's how Hashem made it work. It's because we need to connect to a Tzaddik. We need, as a nation, we are multiple. But the whole idea is that we have to become one heart. So if we have one singular point that we can all connect to, so to speak, one singular soul that we can all connect to, then we can all become one together, so to speak. And that's the whole idea, is that we all have to become one. And that's why it says also in Az Yashir Moshe, and it's a clear line in the Torah. When Hashem took us out of Egypt, they split the sea and destroyed the Egyptians and threw them, and it's a whole list. At the end, the very end, it says, and the people believed in Hashem and in Moshe, his servant. Why can't they just believe in Hashem? Why do they have to believe in Moshe, his servant? Why do they need to believe in Moshe? Believe in Hashem. No, because you have to connect yourself to the Tzaddik. So there's a lot of sources of this. It goes on and on. It's the importance of the Tzaddik. And even Arizal would go to, there's a concept in Kabbalah that every Jewish soul has a certain mitzvah that it's connected to deeper than any other mitzvah. And every huge tzaddik is given the deepest secret of that one mitzvah that's connected to his soul, that he understands deeper that mitzvah than anyone who ever lived. So they say Rabbi Nachman is Rosh Hashanah, and but basically Arizal would go to graves of tzaddikim, and when he would have certain contemplations, he would be able to connect to that mitzvah of that special tzaddik that they were capable of doing. And that, let's say he went to a grave of a tzaddik who had a very powerful mitzvah of, let's say, putting on tefillin. The next time Arizal put on tefillin, he would have the soul of that tzaddik come into him, allow him to do the mitzvah on the highest level. So this is what it means, that everyone's soul of a soul of a tzaddik is capable of it's not really us doing, like every time you think, oh, I did it, or I did a mitzvah on such a high level, they say it's not possible for a person to do a mitzvah on a very high level unless he was capable of, unless the tzaddik who's connected to the mitzvah has a soul, his soul comes into yours in the moment you're doing the mitzvah, allows you to do the mitzvah on the highest level. So this whole idea that, oh, I connect to Hashem myself, oh, I can do this, you can't do anything ourselves. The whole point, we have to become humble enough to realize that we do nothing ourselves. Like, whatever mitzvah you do, it's because Hashem allows you to do it. It's whatever mitzvah you do, it could be because of a million things. It's because you have zchut avot. It's because you have tzaddikim in Shemayim praying for you. It's because Hashem allowed you to wake up this morning. It's because you have some zchut that you didn't do, that you didn't being shown some kindness and some mercy. So I think the whole idea of I can do it myself, I don't need a tzaddik, that whole idea has to be rooted in yesh. That means there's something to me. I can do it myself. The tzaddik himself can't do it himself until he decided, I'm nothing, I can't do it. Then he can do it himself, and that's the tzaddik. How much more so us? So I've read somewhere else also that I'm not sure where it was. I think it was might have been Mamla was again. That the concept of a tzaddik helping, so to speak, helping everybody. It's not like he's carrying us. It's more like what we're trying to get. What we're trying to get is on top of a tree. Us whole as a nation, our goal is try to get to something on top of a tree, and everybody's standing on each other's shoulders, and the tzaddik is the one on top who's able to then reach the fruit that we all want for the rest of us. That's the concept, that we need him to reach the fruit, and he needs us to bring him up on the tree. Two halves of a whole. We're like husband and wife spiritually. It's the tzaddikim and Am Yisrael. We're codependent. We're interdependent. So, during the time of Purim, when there was a decree against the Jewish people, we needed a Mordechai, the Tzaddik, Yisod Olam, to help take us out. And the Tzaddik needed us, our prayers as a nation, our fasting as a nation, for him to be able to help bring it up to Hashem. Just like the Kohanim need Am Yisrael to bring the Shalosh Regalim, to bring the sacrifices. We need the Kohanim to take our sacrifices. We need the Tzaddikim just like they need us. So it's not really about, I can do it myself, this, that. It's a deep Kabbalistic concept. It's a well-founded concept. And I bring it up again that, Rav Aryeh Kaplan, if he had no problem with it, of connecting to the tzaddik, he had no problem with Breslev, and he was way better versed in the concepts of idol worship in Christianity than we were. That he wrote a whole book on it, that he learned it in depth. And he understood the distinctions between all of these things. And he also understood the deeper concepts of Breslev, that he learned it in depth and wrote a lot of books and commentary on it. If he can understand that there is a distinction and this isn't considered idol worship, then I think, even without looking too deep into it, even though we could, that we can rely on Rav Aryeh Kaplan's Zatzal as such a Torah giant, such a genius authority. Not necessarily a Breslever, but a Breslever, so to speak. And if he's good with it, then the concept of connecting to a tzaddik should be a good concept for all of us. And Zat Hashem, I hope that gave some of you chizuk who were maybe on the fence, because like I was, like a lot of us were, who maybe didn't understand this concept, who maybe once you brought it up, we have people saying, oh, it's idol worship, is this, is that. It's not, and that this is an ancient custom, and B'zat Hashem, I should be able to see all of you in Uman this year, Rosh Hashanah, B'zat Hashem, connecting to the Tzaddik, B'zat Hashem, and this is a very holy thing. If anyone has any questions, I don't know if I covered everything, but it was like a general thing. So if anyone have any questions, anyone there?
I don't.
Yes, please.
Why don't we do it now?
Okay.
I mean, you explained it, but let's.
Yeah, Yaakov here asking, why don't we do vidui now? We do vidui now. We do it in Uman.
In Oman, yeah.
You can do vidui. Rabbi Nachman explains that, spiritually speaking, there's the 3 levels of connecting to a tzaddik. It doesn't have to be Rabbi Nachman. It just has to be with a real tzaddik. There's one that we know for sure is a real tzaddik. It's Rabbi Nachman. There's a few others I suspect greatly are real tzaddikim. Like famous ones, obviously. Baba Rebbe, Baba Sali. I strongly feel, of course, those are real tzaddikim. But you should connect to the tzaddik whose Torah you follow, whose advice you follow, who you connect to, who your soul feels connected to, and you should do those 3 levels of connection with that tzaddik. How do we do the final levels of connection? If we're learning Breslov all the time, you go to Uman. You do it by the grave of Nachman.
You do it there?
Yeah. If you're learning Kabbalah all the time, you're on that level. You're, go to Meron. Do it by Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. You're connected to Baal Shem Tov specifically. That's your tzaddik. Go to Medjugorje. Do vidui in front of his grave. And I've been there. It's amazing. There's amazing vibe by his grave. So any of you go to Ukraine, you should make the trip out to Medjugorje. Hashem. Very worth it. And
so you could do vidui there.
So yeah, you could do, and you should, but not to him, obviously, to Hashem, but in front of a tzaddik, because they say that the one place in the world where there's a physical presence of a tzaddik, still his presence is his grave. It's as if you physically visited him. They say if his light in this world is like a big light, after he leaves, there's always spiritually as if there's like a candle still lit at his grave. Spiritually, there's a candle corresponding to his great light. So being next to the grave, within the vicinity of that grave of a tzaddik, is very, very holy and very, very powerful. And there's a ton of basis to rely on this, including the Rizal, tons of stories about visiting tzaddikim and seeing miracles. Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel, in Amuka, Shimon Bar Yochai, Rav Nachman, the Lubavitcher Rebbe right here, 20 minutes away. How many stories? There's a lot of stories, a lot of power. When you physically, they all want to pray for you. They all love you. When you physically come visit them, your soul's connected to them on a deeper level, and their soul, who's always praying for you in Shamayim, can now do more for you. So this is a very well-known concept. So doing vidui still possible today. Do vidui at the grave of a tzaddik, preferably the one who you had these other two levels of connection with, seeing their face, aka learning their wisdom, and giving tzedakah to, and do it with your tzaddik, so to speak.
Can you do it to a person, to a tzaddik who's alive now?
You could, but it would have to be a real tzaddik, and the problem is we don't know. I'm not saying they're not tzaddik. I mean like tzaddik as in tzaddik yisod olam. This concept of a tzaddik through whose soul all the other tzaddikim get their soul's power from.
That's only five. That's only five. No?
Oh no, they say okay, yeah. There's one of the biggest Kabbalists in Israel right now says there's 5 main tzaddikim throughout the course of time who are correspond to the 5 levels of the soul, because each of these tzaddikim brought in a massive new revelation of Torah into the world. They say even though this Kabbalist, I forgot his name, he's not a Breslover, but he says the first one is Moshe, because he brought in the Torah, obviously. Next one is Rosh Bar Yochai, because he brought in the depths of the Zohar. Then Arizal, because he brought in the Zohar to be more like mainstream and understood. Then Baal Shem Tov, because then he brought in the deeper levels of practical Kabbalah and enclosed it in Chassidut and love and a completely new outlook on Torah. And then last but not least, Rabbi Nachman Vege, who then took Baal Shem Tov's Torah and brought in these even deeper revelations. So that's just a quick overlook. There's a lot more to it. But no, and every generation has tzaddik yisod olam. The world can't exist without him physically being alive in the world at some point. So every generation, one exists in this world right now, we just don't know who he is. Every generation has him, and according to the Zohar, he's a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu's soul. So that's why it says Moshe Rabbeinu lived 120 years. Zohar says this means he comes back in 120 Gilgulim. For every generation, there's a soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, that's tzaddik yisod olam, from whom the entire world and all the other tzaddikim who exist in the world get their connection to. There are a few that we know of. It's very possible Baba Sali was one, because Baba Sali at one point talked to Rav Sharabi, was also a huge tzaddik, and Rav Sharabi had a dream from his grandfather. This is a small story, but basically Rav Sharabi's grandfather came to him in a dream. He was a very holy rabbi. A lot of miracle stories with him. His grandfather told him this problem Baba Sali is dealing with, which was the story was about at the time, is because he's a Gilgul of Hiskiyahu HaMelech, and this is how he needs to fix it or whatever. And we also know that Hiskiyahu HaMelech was at his time tzaddik yisod olam. And we know some of the tzaddikim yisod olam, like Shmuel was one of them. I think David HaMelech, obviously Yosef HaTzaddik, because he is the archetype, the pinnacle, the root, the essence of what it is to be the tzaddik yisod olam, Yosef HaTzaddik, aka the master of the Brit. It would have had to be Avraham Avinu at some point. At some point there's one main tzaddik yisod olam, the root of the entire world. So as long as you know, because we don't know today who's tzaddik yisod olam, that's the problem. But tzaddikim never die technically. So if there's Torah of tzaddik you connect to, even if he physically passed away, then he's still alive. Spiritually, they can't die. I think the Gemara says tzaddikim never die, and the Rashaim and technically never alive. They're always like they're dead. And tzaddikim, it's like they're always alive, no matter what. So that they're even greater after they pass away. So at the Shem, I hope I shed some light on this controversy, and that stop pulling back from connecting to the Breslov, because it's fire and it's life changing and it's amazing, and connecting to the tzaddik doesn't have to be something that's strange or weird or controversial, and rather something that's humbling and good and help us get to a higher level, because we're all trying to climb the same tree. Just we need to climb up on each other's shoulders if we want to get there. Any other questions from our few participants? Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask. Anybody? Anybody at all? Let me see this. See the chat. Not even any chat messages. Okay. Thank you, great explanation. Thank you, Yosef. God bless you. You should be blessed. All right, guys. So if no one has any other questions, thank you very much for listening. B'ezrat Hashem should be posted up on YouTube. We should all be blessed. And B'ezrat Hashem, we should all see Mashiach soon. And B'ezrat Hashem, see you all in Uman. God bless all of you.
So,